In a galaxy balanced precariously between tenuous alliances and quiet hostilities, the Terran Union had carved out its place as a beacon of peace and diplomacy. Despite Earth's death world classification, a mark that reminded others of its harsh, unpredictable environment and resilient inhabitants, humanity had risen as a voice of reason and moderation among the galaxy's factions. Earth's diplomats, scientists, and leaders had worked tirelessly to establish treaties that protected weaker systems and ensured trade could flourish unimpeded by conflict. The Galactic Empire, on the other hand, had dominated space with an iron grip. Its ruling council, known for its arrogance and insistence on supremacy, saw the galaxy's inhabitants as subjects to be either controlled or ignored. Treaties with the Empire were always fragile, with terms designed to favor them while keeping other factions in line. For humanity, the treaty with the Empire was critical. It shielded Earth's colonies and protected peaceful trade routes, allowing Earth to grow without fear of invasion or aggression. The Terran Union valued the treaty not just for its practical benefits, but as a symbol of humanity's capability for diplomacy. It was this treaty that the Empire shattered without warning. The first reports came from a distant, neutral colony, one that had aligned with Earth under the umbrella of mutual protection. An unprovoked attack from an Imperial fleet had leveled the colony's infrastructure, leaving countless dead and the survivors adrift. The Empire issued a cold, clinical statement. The colony was on Imperial territory, and had been reclaimed. The message was clear. The Empire did not respect the treaty, nor did it value the peace that Earth had worked so hard to preserve. When news of the atrocity reached Earth, it sent shockwaves through every level of society. This was no mere skirmish or territorial dispute. The Empire's actions were a direct violation of the agreements humanity had upheld. In a matter of hours, the Terran Council was convened, with representatives from every colony and diplomatic arm gathering to debate a response. Leading the discussion was Elias Verdun, a seasoned diplomat known for his poise and unshakable commitment to peace. Verdun was a man who had spent his life forging alliances, often choosing dialogue over hostility, even when others had counseled more aggressive approaches. But the destruction of the colony tested his beliefs. The images of devastated buildings, the scattered remnants of lives torn apart, played endlessly in his mind. Friends and families had been obliterated in a single, brutal act of imperial justice. And in that moment, the man who had always argued for restraint and compromise found himself questioning everything. As the Terran Council debated, Verdun listened, feeling the full weight of his responsibility. Earth's response needed to be strong but measured, a balance between justice and diplomacy. Yet for all his years of experience, Verdun felt something he hadn't felt before: rage. He had always believed that diplomacy was humanity's greatest strength, but now that belief felt like a fragile shield against the brutal reality of the Empire's actions. He understood that the Empire had no regard for treaties, no respect for life beyond its borders. And it was clear that they saw Earth's commitment to peace as a weakness to exploit. After hours of deliberation, Verdun rose to speak. His voice was calm, but beneath his words was an unmistakable resolve. He addressed the council, stating that the attack was not just an assault on a single colony, it was an assault on the very principles humanity stood for. If they allowed this aggression to go unanswered, it would signal to the Empire, and to the galaxy, that Earth could be bullied, that the lives of its allies were expendable. For the first time, Verdun suggested that humanity respond with the one thing the Empire would understand: strength. The decision was made. Verdun would go to the Empire's capital, not as a diplomat pleading for peace, but as a representative demanding accountability. The Terran Council empowered him to speak with full authority, even to issue an ultimatum if necessary. Humanity's patience had limits, and Verdun was ready to show the Empire just how thin that line had become. As Verdun prepared to leave, he reflected on what this moment meant, not only for him but for all of humanity. They had spent decades building a reputation as a species of reason and restraint, determined to avoid the brutality that defined so many interstellar factions. But now, standing on the brink of a confrontation they had neither sought nor provoked, Verdun realized that the time had come to demonstrate another side of humanity. His journey to the Empire's capital was a silent one, spent reviewing every diplomatic exchange that had led them to this point. He had faced hostile leaders before, negotiators with hidden agendas, but this felt different. This wasn't just about maintaining a peace agreement. It was about showing the Empire that they could not act with impunity. Verdun knew that Earth's military might was formidable, and although they had restrained from flaunting it, they would not hesitate to defend themselves if pushed. Upon arrival, Verdun was escorted to the Empire's council chamber, where he would confront the ruling body responsible for the recent atrocity. The Empire's counselors, seated in ornate robes and surrounded by symbols of their power, greeted him with thinly veiled contempt. To them, he was a mere diplomat from a lesser world, someone to be tolerated rather than respected. Verdun took his place, standing before the council with an air of composure that belied the anger simmering beneath the surface. He delivered a speech outlining the terms of their treaty, emphasizing the promises made and the lives lost because of the Empire's decision to break them. As he spoke, the councilors exchanged amused glances, their disdain clear. One of them interrupted, dismissing Verdun's words as irrelevant. "Peace is for the weak," the councilor sneered. "And your people have hidden behind treaties long enough. The galaxy belongs to those willing to take it." In that moment, the full weight of humanity's betrayal hit Verdun. The Empire had never respected them. They had seen Earth's diplomacy as nothing more than a convenient shield. His restraint faltered, and his voice took on an edge that silenced the room. He reminded the Council of humanity's resilience, their history of survival against odds that would have destroyed others. He warned them that Earth's commitment to peace should not be mistaken for submission. The Council members exchanged uneasy looks. Verdun's tone was not one of empty threats, but of someone who had been pushed to a breaking point. He ended with a declaration that left no room for doubt. If the Empire continued its aggression, humanity would defend itself with a force the Empire had yet to comprehend. The council chamber fell silent as Verdun's words echoed in the vast, gilded hall. The Empire's leaders, who had watched his speech with casual arrogance, now wore expressions ranging from unease to outright disbelief. For decades, they had regarded humanity as little more than a diplomatic curiosity, a minor species capable of small alliances and cooperative trade but unlikely to pose any true threat. But Verdun's tone left them unnerved, suggesting a depth of resolve and power they hadn't anticipated. One of the senior counselors, a woman known for her sharp intellect and unyielding loyalty to the Empire's expansionist ideals, was the first to break the silence. "You speak boldly, human," she said, a hint of scorn lacing her voice. "Yet we see no fleet, no army, only words. Your threats are hollow, and your people are outmatched. Earth has neither the reach nor the strength to challenge the Empire's will." Verdun met her gaze, unflinching. The councilor's attempt to undermine him was predictable, yet he saw the subtle shifts in the room, small signs of doubt from the councilors who, until this moment, had dismissed humanity entirely. He recognized an opportunity and seized it, choosing his words with the precision of a scalpel. "The Empire may measure power by the number of ships in its fleet and the planets under its rule," he began, his voice steady and penetrating. "But humanity measures strength by something far more enduring. We are not here to conquer, but to endure, to defend, and to protect. If you think we lack the resolve to protect what is ours, then you have misjudged us." Another counselor, younger and less seasoned, shifted uncomfortably and muttered to a colleague. The murmurs spread through the room, an undercurrent of uncertainty rippling among them. Verdun could see it in their faces, the realization that Earth's restraint had lulled them into a false sense of superiority. The Empire had grown accustomed to subjugation without resistance, and Verdun's message defied everything they had come to expect. Just as the tension reached its peak, the Council's highest-ranking member, the Emperor himself, raised a hand to silence the room. His eyes, cold and calculating, focused on Verdun with an intensity that betrayed no emotion. "You speak of strength and resolve," he said, his voice as smooth as it was dismissive. "Yet all we see are empty threats from a race that hides behind treaties. Tell us, Ambassador, if your people are as resilient as you claim, why have you only now come to challenge us? Why did you not rise against us when we first expanded near your colonies? Verdun's gaze hardened, and he took a deliberate breath before responding. We did not rise because we believed in the power of peace and cooperation. We assumed that our shared treaty with the Empire was a mark of respect, a shared commitment to stability. But the Empire's unprovoked attack on a defenseless colony has proven that you view peace as nothing more than a shield to hide behind while you strike from the shadows. You mistake our diplomacy for weakness, but I assure you, we are anything but weak. For a moment, the Emperor seemed taken aback. The council chamber had never been a place for such open confrontation. It was a space where lesser species came to negotiate, to bargain, to plead. Never had one stood in defiance, declaring Earth's strength in the face of imperial arrogance. Verdun's resolve was a direct challenge, and the Emperor's composure wavered, if only slightly. What of the councillors, emboldened by the Emperor's silence, sneered? And what will you do, Ambassador? March your pitiful fleet into imperial territory? We would crush you before your ships could even break through our outer defenses. Verdun allowed himself a slight, calculated smile. Our fleet, he replied, may not match yours in size, but we have learned much from observing the galaxy. We have mastered strategies that account for precision, endurance, and adaptability, qualities that cannot be counted in the number of ships alone. We do not seek a war, but we are prepared to defend ourselves in one. The councillor's expression faltered, but the Emperor spoke again, this time with an edge of impatience. Enough. Earth has spoken its defiance. Return to your leaders and tell them this: the Empire does not tolerate insubordination. This was but a warning strike, a reminder of where power truly lies. Should you continue down this path, we will show you the full extent of our might. Verdun stood motionless, his eyes fixed on the Emperor's as if piercing through the veneer of authority. He had anticipated this response, expected that the Empire would double down on its threats rather than admit to any wrongdoing. But he was prepared. Then you leave us no choice, he said, his voice barely more than a whisper, yet carrying through the chamber like a shot. I will deliver your message. But understand this: humanity has survived on a world that tests life every day. We have not come this far by bending to threats or backing down from tyrants. We offered peace, and you chose war. Do not mistake Earth's patience for passivity. With that, he turned and left the council chamber, his back straight and his steps measured. He knew that every councillor's eyes were on him as he departed, and he relished the image he left behind, a human diplomat who had entered as a voice of peace and left as a figure of defiance. As he exited, Verdun's thoughts turned to Earth's next steps. This confrontation had not ended in reconciliation, as he might have once hoped. The Empire's leaders had made it clear that they would not honor any agreements, that they viewed Earth's peace as something to be broken at their convenience. But they had also shown their own vulnerabilities, their fear hidden behind bluster and arrogance. Back aboard his ship, Verdun connected with Earth's diplomatic and military leaders. His face was unreadable, but his words carried the weight of his encounter. He explained the Empire's stance, detailing the thinly veiled threats and their utter dismissal of Earth's place in the galaxy. The response was unanimous: Earth would not surrender, and their allies stood ready to defend their territories and ideals. Earth's fleet was mobilized, but not as aggressors. Rather, they moved with purpose, positioning themselves along the borders of human space as a show of resolve. They sent out a message across the galaxy, an announcement to all who would listen, declaring that Earth would no longer tolerate imperialist aggression. Humanity sought peace, but any who would threaten that peace would face the full strength of their defense. The Empire's leaders watched this mobilization with unease, knowing that they had ignited something they did not fully understand. Verdun's message to the Empire had been clear, but its true meaning lay in the quiet resolve of Earth's ships, stationed and ready. The Empire could bluster and posture, but they now knew, for the first time, that humanity was not afraid. Verdun's transformation from diplomat to defender had set a new course, one that even he had not foreseen. Earth would no longer hide behind treaties that the Empire disregarded at will. They would defend not just their own people but the values they believed in. And as Verdun returned to Earth, he felt a surge of pride, knowing that humanity was ready to face whatever lay ahead. The Empire had made a grave mistake, and they would soon learn just how serious that mistake was. Word of Verdun's defiance spread quickly throughout the galaxy, a message of warning and resilience. The Empire had aimed to intimidate, but instead they had awoken something far more powerful, a united front ready to defend the values Earth and its allies held sacred. As Earth's fleet moved into position, the sight of their warships along the border sent a clear message: humanity would not back down. For the first time, factions that had remained neutral or quietly oppressed under the Empire's rule began to take notice. On neutral worlds and in territories controlled by other smaller factions, the effect of Earth's response was electrifying. Leaders who had once viewed humanity as quiet diplomats began to see them as a beacon of strength and potential protection. Messages began pouring in from other species and factions, expressing both curiosity and support. Some offered military resources, others their loyalty, and many sought guidance on how to stand against the Empire's rule. What had started as an isolated act of resistance was quickly evolving into a larger movement, and Earth's Terran Council recognized that this moment was critical. For Verdun, however, the situation was personal. Humanity's quiet commitment to peace had been questioned, its resolve tested, and its allies threatened. Each report from Earth's intelligence network brought news of how deeply the Empire's betrayal had resonated across the galaxy. Colonies near Imperial territory remained on high alert, and although the Terran Council continued to emphasize that Earth's first priority was defense, the quiet strength they demonstrated was inspiring others to reconsider the cost of remaining passive. In a meeting with the Terran Council and Earth's military leaders, Verdun outlined the current state of the galaxy. Earth's fleet, though modest compared to the Empire's vast armada, was meticulously prepared. They had focused on technological precision and adaptability, ensuring that each vessel could hold its own against Imperial forces. Earth's military scientists and engineers had worked tirelessly, creating a series of defensive countermeasures that the Empire's forces had yet to see, tools that would allow humanity to stand firm without engaging in reckless destruction. As Verdun reviewed the strategic plans with his team, he felt the weight of his position more acutely than ever. The Empire had challenged Earth's commitment to peace, believing it a weakness. Yet Earth's leaders understood that to yield now would not only risk their sovereignty but set a dangerous precedent for the entire galaxy. They could not allow the Empire's unchecked ambition to continue unchallenged. Then came the turning point. One evening, a transmission was intercepted from deep within Imperial space, sent by a faction within the Empire itself. The message, cryptic and urgent, was from a group of Imperial officials secretly opposing their government's aggressive policies. They had watched Earth's response to the attack with admiration, recognizing that humanity's strength came from its principles rather than brute force. These dissenting officials believed that the Empire's continued pursuit of expansion at any cost would lead to ruin, and they reached out in a desperate attempt to forge a covert alliance. This alliance could shift the balance, but it was risky. The Terran Council deliberated, weighing the dangers of aligning with Imperial defectors. Verdun argued in favor, reasoning that these officials could provide invaluable intelligence and a unique insight into the Empire's weaknesses. After much debate, the Council agreed to proceed, and Verdun personally took charge of establishing a secure line of communication with the defectors. Through encrypted exchanges, Verdun learned of a weakness in the Empire's armada. While the Empire's fleet was vast, its command structure was rigid and relied heavily on centralized control from their main outpost. If Earth could disable or disrupt this central command, it would leave a significant portion of the Empire's fleet in disarray, unable to function cohesively. Verdun saw this as the opportunity they needed to level the playing field without resorting to full-scale war. The Terran Council approved a mission to target the Empire's command outpost, a critical but well-guarded installation located deep within their territory. Earth's fleet, led by a small but elite task force, prepared for what would be a high-stakes mission. Verdun, though not a military man, joined the mission, knowing that his presence would symbolize the resolve of humanity. This was not a war of conquest. It was a declaration that Earth would not yield to tyranny. As the task force approached the command outpost, they employed every tactic Earth's engineers had developed. Cloaking technologies masked their approach, and advanced jamming systems silenced Imperial sensors. They moved with precision, each maneuver calculated to avoid detection until they were in striking range. The plan was not to destroy the outpost, but to disable its communication network, rendering it incapable of coordinating the Empire's fleet effectively. When the strike was launched, it was swift and without warning. Earth's task force jammed the outpost's signals, deploying EMP bursts that rendered Imperial communications useless. For a brief but critical window, the Empire's fleet was left in disarray, unable to respond cohesively or retaliate. The Empire's ships, trained to rely on centralized commands, found themselves lost without orders. Confusion spread as captains scrambled to understand what was happening, their once dominant formation fracturing in the face of Earth's calculated strike. The message was clear: humanity would not bow to threats, nor would it be bullied into submission. Earth had not only defended itself but had struck at the very heart of the Empire's strength, using intellect and strategy rather than brute force. The attack on the command outpost was brief, yet the impact was profound. Earth's ships withdrew as quickly as they had arrived, leaving the Empire's fleet in a chaotic state. Back on Earth, Verdun's return was met with a quiet, solemn pride. He and the task force had demonstrated to the galaxy that humanity would protect itself with unwavering resolve. The Empire's forces were left humbled, their illusion of invincibility shattered by a calculated response that required neither mass destruction nor conquest. Earth's allies, and even some Imperial-controlled factions, took notice. They saw that humanity was willing to defend its principles and protect its people, but it would not compromise its values in the process. The Empire, now forced to contend with its own disunity and a tarnished reputation, faced an unprecedented challenge. The dissenters within their ranks grew bolder, emboldened by Earth's actions. Small acts of resistance began to ripple through Imperial territory, as factions once silenced by fear now saw that the Empire's power could be challenged. Earth's stand had inspired a new wave of defiance across the galaxy. As Verdun looked out over the skyline of Earth's capital upon his return, he reflected on the path they had taken. Humanity had shown that they were more than diplomats or warriors. They were defenders of peace with an ironclad resolve. They had struck not to conquer, but to protect, to preserve a vision of a galaxy free from the Empire's domination. The galaxy had been watching, and humanity's message had been heard. The aftermath of Earth's strike on the Empire's command outpost sent ripples across the galaxy. Humanity's calculated blow had exposed the Empire's vulnerability, shaking its air of invincibility. The sight of an entire Imperial fleet left disoriented and leaderless left factions both within and outside the Empire questioning its authority. Earth's reputation was no longer confined to diplomacy. It had transformed into a symbol of resilience and calculated strength, one that resonated with those under the Empire's oppressive rule. The Empire's response was predictably harsh. Humiliated by Earth's defiance, they issued a proclamation, branding humanity as an enemy of the state and vowing to restore order through force. Yet the tone of their declaration lacked its usual certainty. For the first time, factions that had once been bound to the Empire by fear began quietly reconsidering their alliances. Messages of solidarity with Earth arrived from leaders on remote worlds and from rebellious voices within the Empire itself, all inspired by the Terran Council's unyielding stance. The Empire's attempt to consolidate its power by intimidating humanity only strengthened the resolve of those who had suffered under its rule. Small uprisings, isolated at first, began to flare up across the galaxy. News spread of colonies refusing to pay imperial tributes, of outposts defying imperial orders, and of citizens who had once lived in silence now finding courage. Earth's defiance had sparked a movement, one that grew with every story of rebellion that reached the farthest corners of the galaxy. Amid this shifting tide, Verdun returned to the Terran Council, briefing Earth's leaders on the current state of the Empire, and the messages of support flooding in. The Council was cautious, understanding the risk of becoming directly entangled in a galactic uprising. Yet they also recognized that Earth had unwittingly become a symbol of hope. Verdun emphasized that humanity could not ignore the voices seeking guidance, and that their responsibility extended beyond the preservation of their own sovereignty. The Council agreed, formulating a strategy that would allow Earth to support these emerging allies without instigating further direct conflict. With that, Earth began sending resources, medical supplies, encrypted communications, and strategic advice to factions resisting the Empire's control. This support was never intended to spark an all-out war but rather to empower others to take control of their destinies. Verdun's experience as a diplomat guided the Terran Council's strategy. Earth's strength lay not in conquest but in its ability to inspire, to uplift, and to stand with those who sought freedom. The Empire, however, saw Earth's outreach as a direct challenge to its rule. Determined to quash what it perceived as rebellion fueled by humanity, the Empire gathered its forces, preparing for a show of overwhelming force. Their plan was simple: intimidate or annihilate. The Imperial fleet's formidable armada was mobilized, and scouts reported that it was headed toward one of Earth's allied colonies. The Empire believed that by making an example of this world, they would send a message that no alliance with Earth could protect anyone from their wrath. When the news reached Earth, Verdun felt a familiar mixture of dread and resolve. The Council was unanimous in its response: Earth would not abandon its allies. Humanity's fleet, prepared for this very moment, mobilized under a single directive: protect their allies and ensure that the Empire understood the consequences of its aggression. Verdun stood with the fleet's commanders, watching as Earth's ships moved with purpose and precision, ready to defend against the Empire's show of force. The two fleets met on the edge of the Allied colony's space, an awe-inspiring yet terrifying spectacle of power. The Empire's ships, vast and imposing, formed a near-unbreakable wall. They sent a message to Earth's fleet, warning them to stand down or face total obliteration. The Empire still believed that sheer size would bring humanity to its knees, that the terror of their name alone would force Earth into submission. But Earth's response was simple and resolute: they would defend their allies, regardless of the cost. The battle began, and from the first exchange, it was clear that humanity's tactics and technology had been meticulously designed for such a confrontation. Rather than engaging in head-on assaults, Earth's ships employed coordinated maneuvers, targeting the Empire's command ships and disabling key systems with surgical precision. Each move was carefully calculated, aiming to neutralize rather than destroy. Earth's fleet used every advantage: speed, intelligence, adaptability, demonstrating that their smaller numbers were more than compensated by their skill and strategy. The Empire, unprepared for such a defense, found itself struggling to maintain cohesion. Without the centralized control they were accustomed to, their ships faltered, and chaos spread through their ranks. The battle was fierce, but Earth's fleet maintained its defensive posture, refusing to turn the confrontation into a bloodbath. The Empire had expected brutality. Instead, they faced discipline and restraint, qualities that confounded their commanders and demoralized their forces. In the midst of battle, Earth's fleet broadcast a message across the galaxy, directed not only at the Empire but at all who watched. Verdun's voice resonated through every channel, calm and unwavering. He declared that Earth would never seek war but would defend itself and its allies against tyranny. The message was a testament to humanity's commitment to peace, even in the face of overwhelming aggression. It was a reminder to the galaxy that Earth had the power to protect without the desire to dominate, a stance that stood in stark contrast to the Empire's legacy of oppression. This message, coupled with Earth's tactical prowess, had a profound effect. Across the galaxy, those under the Empire's rule witnessed the impossible, a species that did not bow to power, that chose restraint over destruction. The Empire's narrative of humanity as a lesser species unraveled, replaced by respect, admiration, and a growing desire for change. As the Empire's fleet began to retreat, Earth's fleet did not pursue. They held their ground, their purpose fulfilled. The Empire had been repelled, its forces humbled by a smaller, seemingly weaker opponent. Earth's message had been sent, and it resonated deeply within the hearts of those who had yearned for freedom but lacked the courage to fight for it. When the battle ended, Verdun returned to Earth's capital, where he was met with a mixture of pride and relief. The galaxy had seen Earth's resolve, and the Empire, once feared without question, was now questioned by its own people. Stories of the battle spread like wildfire, inspiring countless others who had watched from afar. In the following weeks, rebellions erupted throughout the Empire's territories, fueled by hope and a renewed sense of possibility. Earth's role as a defender, not a conqueror, had ignited something the Empire could not crush, a belief that strength could be just and that power could be used for good. Verdun, once a quiet diplomat, now stood as a symbol of humanity's resilience. The Terran Council continued its support for those seeking freedom, carefully balancing its influence to avoid unnecessary conflicts.